about that, everyone. Thank you for joining to us today. There are a lot of you on the line, so we will have you muted throughout the presentation, but please feel free to use that chat and questions feature on the right. Throughout the event, feel free to chat with one another. We'll ask you to use the chat feature as well and enter questions. We don't expect the presentation to go a full hour, hopefully around 30 minutes or so, so really want to address those. But a quick agenda for today, so we're going to give an overview of our organization, Metropolitan Energy Center, and our Energy Solutions Hub, a quick overview of how energy codes are developed and adopted, challenges for home rule states, the impact on the energy code, which is what we'll spend the bulk of our presentation on, and then we'll talk about, okay, this was great information, now what? And then again, we will open it up to questions. I quickly want to introduce you to your presenters. So we have Mary English, Metropolitan Energy Center, or MEC for short. She is our building performance manager, so has been in the industry a very long time. And then Brittany Drew, our building performance associate, and myself, Emily Wolf. I'm a senior program coordinator and policy analyst. And if you really want to learn more about us, you can go to our staff page on our website and check it out. So a quick overview of Metropolitan Energy Center. So since 1983, our organization has worked with thousands of residents, businesses, municipalities, including many of you on the line, to transform energy use in the building and transportation sectors. So we were originally founded in 1983 to help neighbors in the Kansas City, Missouri area improve the energy efficiency of their home. And we continue this program through our Energy Solutions Hub, which I'll talk more about in a minute. And we also have our Project Living Proof demo home in KCMO. So this is a place where community members can come and learn how to improve the efficiency of their homes, as well as we have a partnership with the Master Gardeners of Greater Kansas City. It's a really cool place. Definitely reach out. We would love, our teammate David would be more than thrilled to give you a tour or help you host an event there. Obviously, we're not talking much about transportation today, but definitely wanted to highlight that MEC has the honor of housing the Kansas City Regional and Central Kansas Clean Cities Coalition. So Clean Cities is a Department of Energy program, and there's almost 90 coalitions across the US. And so MEC houses the Kansas City Regional and Central Kansas. So again, if you have any transportation questions whatsoever, please reach out to us. Our coordinators would be more than happy to work with you all and get you pointed in the right direction. It's a really strong program across the nation, so it's a good resource to be aware of. So now I'll tell you about our Energy Solutions Hub, so for short, HUB. So this is a resource for the entire metro and is equipped with the expertise to assist residents, builders, property managers, policymakers like yourselves to a cleaner, more efficient community in Kansas and Missouri. And so we currently have funding right now through the City of Kansas City, Missouri and the Department of Energy. And while we're working with the Kansas City, Missouri office on one component of the program, but really the goal of it is to be a resource for the entire region. So we have partnerships with Children's Mercy Hospital, which Mary will talk more about in her presentation. They're on our Healthy Housing Task Force, which is led by Brittany, our teammate. So a lot of good information there. We also have a Hub Advisory Council. So basically experts to give us who are in the industry, help us, when we're determining, what our goals are and areas we should be focusing on, giving us that guidance. And then also providing upcoming soon training for local building officials at no cost. So this will be available to building officials in the metro area on the energy code. It will be available for continuing education credit. So definitely stay tuned for more information on that. We will get it out there. And any day now, we should be relaunching our website, our Hub website, which is all this information is going to be in one place. So it's a one-stop shop for if you're a resident, policymaker, building owner, to get resources and information. And we also have, through another component of our program, 2 customer service representatives who are awesome and would love to talk with you about some of your needs and interests. Okay, so before we get started, I'm going to ask you all to answer a quick survey question in the chat, if you don't mind, or I guess trivia. So this is to get you guys practice using the chat feature. I promise this, we only have 3 questions. But in 2021, what percentage of realtors surveyed said promoting energy efficiency in their listings was very or somewhat valuable? So I gave options. So 15%, 40%, or 65%. So if you want to put in the chat your guess, so in 2021, what percentage of realtors surveyed said promoting energy efficiency in their listings was very or somewhat valuable? 15%, 40%, or 65%? And if you could put that in the chat, what you think. Brittany or Mary, are we getting any guesses in the chat? No. Well, the answer is 65%, and that is a report from the National Association of Realtors. And so obviously that is not directly tied to the energy code, but I think what it demonstrates is more than ever, people are starting to think about, okay, how efficient is my home? What materials are made of it? And so I think that's a topic we're going to continue to see of interest from community members. And I also think what demonstrates a public interest is the fact that we have representatives from 19 cities across Kansas and Missouri registered for this event, and actually 1 person from Charlotte, North Carolina. So I think, again, that demonstrates there's an interest in the metro and across the country on energy efficiency and how we can have safer, more comfortable, and healthier homes and buildings. So real quickly, I just want to give a quick overview of, okay, like, well, what is even an energy code? So it's a part of a suite of model codes developed by the International Code Council. So you'll see on the right there's 14 different types of building codes, like plumbing, zoning, swimming pool and spa. But within that is the International Residential Code and International Energy Conservation Code, which you'll hear a lot is the IECC. So in both of those codes, they lay out the minimum energy efficiency requirements for new construction and major renovations of buildings. So as a reminder, energy requirements are in the International Residential Code and the International Energy Conservation Code. So that's for your commercial and multifamily buildings. I want to say too in the code, one thing to keep in mind is that it applies to residential buildings 3 stories and lower, so those townhomes as well. So as I mentioned, the code is updated every 3 years, and then the U.S. Department of Energy will look at it and say, okay, is this more efficient than the last iteration? And once they do so, jurisdictions may adopt and modify as the codes as they see fit. So most across the U.S., there are statewide codes, but some states like Kansas and Missouri, which are home rule states, are adopted and amended at the local level. So Kansas and Missouri are 2 of home rule states in the U.S. So each municipality in the region can adopt the code when and which one whenever they want, as well as make any amendments. So challenges for home rule states. I know in your all roles, you're probably familiar with some of the hurdles home rule states cause. So it creates a patchwork of confusing and outdating codes due to municipalities adopting codes with various amendments or in different timeframes. Poorer jurisdictions may opt for less efficient codes or no codes at all. In lots of rural areas, there is no energy code out of concerns about costs or worried about lack of resources. Can result in weaker energy policies compared to other states. Regarding statewide analysis of energy policies, Kansas and Missouri, unfortunately, are usually lower on the list. And then, most importantly, it can unintentionally push costs onto residents in the form of higher utility bills and higher healthcare costs. So we're going to go into these topics more in depth throughout the presentation, but I want to quickly highlight the impact of the energy code. So it creates healthier and more comfortable buildings because it affects your home's moisture management, air quality, fire safety. It protects residents from extreme weather. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Association, said one of the strongest things a jurisdiction can do to protect their residents from extreme weather is have updated and enforced building codes, promotes energy equity, requiring buildings to be more efficient, not only protects individuals and families' health, especially children, but saves households money and enabling a more consistent lifestyle. And it boosts economic development. In addition to creating jobs, it lets people reinvest the money they're saving into themselves and their futures. And Out of all those building codes we showed you earlier, the energy code is the only one that is tested for cost effectiveness and actually pays for itself. So again, we're going to dive into these a little more, but I'm going to pass it over to Mary English as she talks about some of the health, going to the details, how the building code, specifically energy code, can impact health and safety. So I'll hand it over to you, Mary.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you all for being here. When it comes to energy codes, it's important to remember that building performance professionals release them as a package. They're using what's called a whole building approach, which understands the science of how these different components, like insulation and heating cooling systems, just to name two examples, work together. Since we don't have time today for a whole house building science presentation, I want to talk about the primary goals of good energy codes as they are written by the International Energy Codes Coalition. The goal of energy efficiency, to keep the envelope from wall to wall, floor to ceiling, want to keep the building dry, consistent temperatures throughout, the right humidity levels, allergen or worse like toxin free, and of course make it affordable. Currently, throughout most of the region, the residential codes do not live up to these goals. I'm saying this as someone who has audited hundreds of homes for over 12 years as a residential energy specialist. Energy retrofits are happening now to mitigate poor execution of energy codes of the past. And note that many of the same methods of the past are still being used in new residential construction today. Commercial codes are better. In recent years, technology has improved that makes these codes much more attainable for new construction. The reasons residential codes in general have been entrenched in older methods, however, due to code that has been amended, as Emily mentioned, to remove these advancements in technology from our region's various code policies. Just one example. This is an infrared image of a home that was insulated with fiberglass bats. A fiberglass bat is only as good as its installation. If they are not installed correctly, you'll see cold spots in the walls, as this example of a single-family home infrared scan. Note that there are cold spots in the ceiling too. I'll get to what that means in a second. And unless the homeowner wants to start gutting drywall, this cold spot issue that is very prevalent in this region is really not fixable. And when you start talking about gaps in insulation and air sealing, you are now potentially inviting big issues like mold growth. The prior infrared image that showed very cold spots in the ceiling would have been something I would have checked as my role of an energy auditor in the past for potential mold growth in the attic. I don't want to infer that every cold spot has mold, but I will emphasize that in our extreme temperature days in the summer and winter, the potential will be there as temperature differences between the house and outside can lead to consistent condensation in the building envelope, which can then lead to health issues caused by black mold. Children's Mercy Hospital here in Kansas City has literally spent decades studying this and trying to mitigate it in homes where families may not be able to afford or perhaps don't own their own homes. Children's Mercy Hospital Healthy Homes started with the asthma initiative. Quote this from their website. The asthma initiative was based on the premise that most people are unaware that certain housing conditions can trigger asthma attacks and that mitigating those triggers can have a profound effect on the severity of attacks. They go on to cite an early study. One study of the asthma initiative found reductions of 62% in emergency department visits, 86% in hospital admissions, and 38% in clinic visits among the study's 25 participants in the following a home assessment compared with the year preceding that assessment. So in other words, we had 25 families in homes that were suffering from health issues like childhood asthma visits in the family, and they weatherized their homes and then went back to those 25 participants and saw these drops in hospital visits and admissions. Additionally, another study on the East Coast that did something similar with an affordable housing campus found, quote, pediatric asthma is currently the most prevalent chronic disease in the United States, with children in lower income families disproportionately affected. That's from Biomedical Central. in an intro of a scientific study they conducted on the affordable housing campus in Boston, Massachusetts. So as residential codes impact low-rise multifamily housing too, this is very much a fairness and equity issue for renters and affordable housing tenants. So finally, this is a horrifying example, but we cannot ignore that cold buildings due to energy inefficiencies can literally be a life or death safety issue under these worst case scenarios. I like to say that space heaters are the refuse of an inefficient building, and they're also one of the most inefficient ways to heat a space, and they are dangerous to boot. And of course, finally, we can't ignore the elephant in the room any longer because Mother Nature won't let us. Better energy codes help us address the looming resiliency and durability problems our current inefficient buildings are crumbling under in our new normal of extreme weather. The congressionally established National Institute of Building Sciences is seen through research that better codes lead to money saved through building resiliency. Quote, a recent study by the congressionally established National Institute of Building Sciences found that using the latest model building codes provides a municipal benefit of $11 for every $1 invested through earthquake, flood, and wind mitigation benefits. It goes on to say, quote, building codes will greatly improve society's disaster resilience while adding only about 1% to the construction cost relative to 1999 standards. The greatest benefits accrue to communities using the most recent code additions. And that was from 2020. And I am going to hand this back over to Emily.
Thanks, Mary. This is a good segue into, again, talking about energy equity, which Brittany will talk to you all about. Another question is for you all to guess in the chat feature, what percentage of households in the Kansas City Metro are renters? If you want to type in chat, to not give you options this time, what percentage of households in the Kansas City Metro area are renters? And the answer is 45%. So what that means is nearly half of the Kansas City area has little control over the efficiency of the places they call home. And I want to highlight these numbers here because I think a lot of people would say, oh, well, maybe I myself thought, oh, well, that's probably high because it's looking at, you know, a big city like KC-Mo or even a more urban area like Kansas City, Kansas. You know, you'll see in those yellow boxes, I pulled the renter percentage rates in all of the cities registered for this webinar. I apologize if you registered last minute, you're probably not on there, but I was really surprised to see that Independence, Missouri had 39%, Lenexa had 39%, even Overland Park and Mission, you know, there was a lot higher than what I expected. So again, I think it goes to, you know, we need to, especially because people are renting more than ever, ensure that the places people call home are really efficient and safe. And so I'm gonna hand it over to Brittany as she talks about energy codes and energy equity in general. Go ahead, Brittany.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. Like she mentioned, I'll be talking a little bit about the historical context of why we need energy equity and how residents who earn lower incomes can benefit from stronger energy codes. So just so we're all on the same page, I want to share what energy equity consists of. According to the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, energy equity recognizes that disadvantaged communities have been historically marginalized and overburdened by pollution, underinvestment in clean energy infrastructure, and lack of access to energy efficient housing and transportation. Now, at MEC, and I'm sure all of you on the call today, we want Kansas City region residents to have access to clean energy options, energy efficient housing, and affordable utilities, you know, for our residents to have energy equity. But unfortunately, not everyone in our region has access to those things. And this has a lot to do with intentional and unintentional government policies that allowed for segregated cities and unequal housing opportunities. In most major cities, there is a major difference in the types of housing and the quality of housing in various parts of their cities. And because this is Kansas City region focused, I'm going to be talking about Kansas City. So I'm sure everyone here is familiar with the truce divide. residents of color, especially Black residents, were barred out of certain areas by Jim Crow laws, discriminatory housing covenants, and government-sanctioned redlining. So the image you see here on your screen is from an interactive GIS mapping system created by the University of Richmond in Virginia. And this shows how the Homeowners Loan Corporation categorized neighborhoods in major cities. So you'll see on the bottom left, there's a key that describes each of these neighborhoods, starting from best, which you can see in the green highlighted parts of this map, still desirable, which are the blue colors, C, definitely declining, and D, hazardous. And this pertained to what this government-sponsored corporation thought of these neighborhoods and the desirability of providing government-backed mortgages to folks in these areas. Okay, so you can see that most of the red and yellow spots are on the east of the Troost line, so on East Kansas City, and then also in North Kansas City. These areas have high Black and Latino populations, and you can see articles, you can see statistics and multiple personal stories about the disinvestment by public and private entities in these areas. Decades of disinvestment in housing stock and quality can lead to dilapidated homes or homes that are not well insulated or aren't energy efficient. So look, I know that this can be uncomfortable to talk about and it can be easy to just look away, but the historical context is so important when we're talking about energy and housing. And today, more than ever, many cities and businesses are trying to incorporate equity into their operations. So it's very critical that we see where these issues begin. And so in our follow-up email, I'll be sending some more resources that go more in depth on this topic. Now I want to give you some more context about energy and affordability for Kansas City residents. Granted, I know that there are many of you from outside of Kansas City, Missouri, so I would urge you to look at some of these statistics that are probably located within your city manager or village manager's office, or perhaps your housing department. So out of the top 48 metro areas in the US, Kansas City is number 7 in terms of energy burden. And that's pretty astounding because we're only the 36th most populous city in the country. And for households with lower incomes, Kansas City, Missouri ranks the 9th highest with an energy burden of 8.5%. So if you look to the right of your screen on this slide, I want to make sure we're all on the same page with what energy burden is. And so essentially, that's the amount of money you're spending on energy over your household income, and that's your energy burden. So essentially what you're spending on electricity, gas, and water as your utilities, right? So basically that can really have a big effect on a lot of people. Electric and gas utility debt is expected to be more than $24 billion by the end of 2022. And that is 3 to 4 times more than last year. And so how do we know that energy efficiency and utility affordability is important? Well, according to the Kansas City, Missouri 5-year housing policy, Kansas City, Missouri residents, when selecting a home, energy efficiency was in the top 5 of their priorities. And that's right up there next to housing affordability and safety. So let's do the math for the average utility cost for a single person making Missouri minimum wage. This information is found on the Missouri Department of Labor. And you could also do this for the Kansas side, for those of you who are online from Kansas. The minimum wage currently is $7.25, and you can also find that on the Kansas Department of Labor website. So the Missouri minimum wage currently as it stands is $11.15 an hour. So if you have a worker that's working an average of 40 hours a week and multiply that by 4 weeks a month, you're going to be making pre-tax $1,000 and $784. And so if we go back to the energy burden for some of our lowest income workers, 8.5% of that is $151.74 in energy costs a month. So while these costs may look arbitrary to you, the fact of the matter is that low-income residents spend a higher proportion of their income towards energy bills. Low-income households spend 3 times more of their income on energy costs than non-low-income households. And according to Missouri Saves, an energy efficiency advocacy group, low-income customers are more likely to live in less energy efficient units to begin with. So that's not all. We go to my last slide. Costs are going up in all areas of life: food, fuel, energy, housing. Due to the pandemic, ongoing world affairs, and wage stagnation, inflation is at an all-time high. Residents are really feeling the impact in their wallets. So as a rule of thumb, you should be paying no more than 30% of your monthly income on housing, and that should include utilities. But we are increasingly seeing housing costs rise for residents. On the screen here, you can see an excerpt from a KCUR article when they did their rent series earlier this year and into the last year as well. Rent costs are cutting into funds that residents usually would have to pay for their utilities. So you can see here that rent in Kansas City went up 6% overall from the second quarter of 2020 to the second quarter of 2021. And I don't have to tell you all how important energy is. I mean, we use it to cook, to heat and cool our homes, to travel. So it is so important for us to take into consideration measures such as strong building energy codes that will increase energy efficiency and that will help save your constituents money. So with that, I am going to pass it back over to Emily.
Thanks, Brittany. That was good info. And we'll send out on the resources, as Brittany mentioned, several from the presentation, but there's a really awesome video from Flatland KC recently that's about 8 minutes long and talks about a lot of issues and talks to some nonprofits, how they're picking up a lot of that burden by helping residents pay for utility bills. So we'll definitely send that out. But our final section and trivia question is, it again may not seem related to energy codes, but it is. So the question is, approximately what percentage of adults in the Kansas City Metro support tax rebates for the purchase of electric vehicles or solar panels? So again, approximately what percentage of adults in the Kansas City Metro support tax rebates for the purchase of electric vehicles or solar panels? And the answer is 77%. So if you have a chance, definitely check out the Yale Climate Opinion Maps. They have a lot of cool data like this and can tell you specifically for your municipality. But I think why this is important, in the new energy code, there are requirements to have your building or home electric vehicle ready or solar ready. And some other many cities across the US have already implemented these requirements in their building codes so that you know, when a resident or maybe a commercial building wants to install EV chargers or solar panels, they're much more prepared. And kind of as Mary hit home earlier, it's much easier to do these things early on versus going back and doing retrofits. And so again, I think too, this just demonstrates that more than ever, people are really starting to think about clean energy in the way they travel and as well as in their homes. So as we mentioned earlier, the energy code and energy efficiency boosts economic development. So as investments are made in energy efficiency, new employment opportunities become available. So in 2019, the energy efficiency sector continued to produce more new jobs than any energy sector. In Kansas, that represented 72% of clean energy jobs, and in Missouri, 73%. And so those images on the right show, okay, well, what does an energy efficiency job entail? So on the right, that kind of breaks down the type of jobs, sectors, and energy efficiency. So you'll see in Missouri alone, there's 20,000 jobs in 2019 regarding HVAC. So again, this website, Clean Jobs Midwest, definitely encourage you to check it out. It has a lot of great information specific to Kansas and Missouri. And one thing that also increased was jobs in the advanced transportation sector. So again, as more automakers and suppliers continue to shift towards electric vehicles, that's seen a big jump as well. Energy efficiency also supports small businesses. And small businesses honestly really drive the energy sector as a whole in Kansas and Missouri and across the US. So in 2020, 60% of Kansas clean energy businesses were small businesses and 70% in Missouri. And what they measured that by is if their company had 20 employees or less. And I think in COVID, we learned more than ever that there's a big focus on supporting small business owners. So if you want to support a small business owner, invest in energy efficiency. And finally, it boosts economic development because it helps property owners combat tenant turnover. So Realtor Magazine suggests property owners invest in energy solutions to benefit tenants and their bottom lines. They estimate tenant turnover can range anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000, and the median was about $2,500. So again, tenant turnover includes moving the tenant out, getting the property ready, marketing it, leasing it to new tenants. And just a quick example, personal, I know a small business rents out space in an old building in KCMO that's been recently, renovated, and they've had lots of issues with extremely high utility costs. The room, it's not that hot outside and it's unbearable, and the property owner unfortunately has not given them much support, and so they're going to have to switch locations. So again, I think it's those costs that we're cutting, they go somewhere. They don't just disappear into the abyss. They're passed on to someone, and it's residents and small building owners, small business owners. So now what you're probably thinking, okay, that was really great information. Now what am I supposed to do? So contact us. We would love to present at an upcoming meeting or event of yours. You can learn more about our Healthy Housing Task Force, our Hub Advisory Council, or other projects and programs. And we're at Project Living Proof, and receive additional information on energy codes, training, funding opportunities. We're here, that's our job, to support you all. Contact Children's Mercy to learn more about their environmental health and healthy homes programs. I think it would really open up your eyes to a lot of the things they're working with residents on a daily basis, and we can make that connection if needed. Connect with a council member from a nearby municipality to learn about their code adoption and enforcement processes we've seen over the last few years. Because this is more of a hot topic, like Overland Park had 2 separate committees that evaluated the residential and commercial code, and included a variety of stakeholders. Kansas City Mo had open community meetings. So it's really good to ask other municipalities what they're doing. And then also ask your building official. At the end of the day, these are the people who have to implement these codes, and we want them to feel supported. So talk to them, say, what resources do you need? Do you need more training? Do you need more staff? So you can make that happen. So not only do we have good codes on the books, but they're enforced. So that is all. There's our contact information. It looks like we have about 20 minutes or so we can open it up for questions. I don't know if we've seen many questions in the chat. Let me see here, my cursor's a little off. I might have to.
Emily, while we're waiting for some questions to be written, if you don't mind, I'd just like to add too that Metropolitan Energy Center is also building resources to help support building codes departments across the region with training resources and information. And there are other establishments that are also gearing up for contractor training. MEC, the Building Energy Exchange is starting a new program. So, while we're having this conversation, we're not just trying to like tell you something and leave the building, no pun intended. We're creating resources as well to support our residents and businesses as technological advances allow us to change things for the better for the region.
Good information. I don't know if we maybe we're having issues with the chat or questions. I don't see any, but I'm sure we have some.
We did have a question, didn't we, early on from somebody that had pre-registered, I thought, too.
Oh, yes. One thing that is brought up quite frequently, and it's a valid concern, is the cost that this will pass on to making the home or building more expensive to build. I assume that's one from the group. I don't know if you want to handle that one, Mary, about as these codes become updated, it might be more expensive.
Sure. Let me go into my screen here. So let's talk a little bit about that by starting with the slide right behind this. There is a metric on the 2018. So the two codes that are being most discussed in this region are the 2018 IECC and the 2021. And there are, we have slides here that discuss a little bit about the cost effectiveness of improving codes. So what we're seeing here is a annual cash flow analysis using a life cycle cost savings, which is different than simple payback. It incorporates things like the cost of capital, inflationary concerns, both for building costs and for consumer utility rates. Now, I understand this year has kind of thrown us all a little sideways in this, but as we look forward to the future, it's important that we look at life cycle savings. This chart, again, shows 2018 analysis, and then the next slide shows the analysis on the 2021 comparison. Additionally, yes, so there was a cost analysis specifically for the state of Kansas and Missouri, and we have that information as well. We're going to, and then that was done with simple payback for Kansas, this life cycle for the DOE, and the simple payback was 6 years for Kansas. And we also did put some information here for Missouri. Additionally, we're going to be sending you resources on other analyses that were done. There was a really good one conducted in just this year, January 2022, by ICF, which is an independent nonpartisan company that does cost efficiency analysis on the multiple different sectors. And we'll send a link to that study, but they also show that would be in the 36, second to last slide, where if you look at this table, it's their table 11B from their report, anything in blue in percentages for per climate zone. Kansas City region has both climate zone 4 and climate zone 5 north of the river. Blue in percentages are showing a net savings for the homeowner for the 2021 code, which is what the ICF study was. So I don't know, Emily or Brittany, if you have anything to add to that answer.
I don't think so. I think that was great. Again, talking about the cost, and we have some local examples as well. I feel bad. I don't know if the chat's not working. I could, let's see here. If you have,
is there a hand raise or unmute for the last 15 minutes? Maybe you could just pass the conversation.
If you raise your hand, I can unmute you. So let me take a look. I saw a hand raise. Oh, sorry, there. Okay, here we go. Scrolling down. Oh, Krista has a question. So Krista, I will unmute you if you want to go ahead. Sorry, you probably maybe didn't plan on speaking, but if you want to ask your question.
No, you're fine. I was going to tell you, so the chat doesn't have any box for us to make anything. At least I don't know where it's at. It just has announcements.
Okay, I'm so sorry about that. Yeah, if you have a question, please raise your hand and we can definitely answer it. So I'm scrolling through. Did you have a question or anything you want to add, Carissa?
So I did get a call in the middle of it, so I didn't hear the whole part about the cost adding onto the mortgage. So I was wondering, are the mortgage companies going to work with the energy updates to raise the allowance on mortgages for people?
Well, I think that there is a growing consensus. I know that insurance companies are definitely, their umbrella resources. The reinsurance companies have been doing studies and promoting better code for more than a decade now. The financial institutions have been a little slower to respond, but there are green banks and other financial methods and resources that are available now that weren't just a few years ago for folks to finance energy improvement based on the energy savings that they will receive.
Right. So I work with one loan officer or appraiser that does the green mortgages, but typically it's houses with solar panels. So I wasn't sure how, if the code was 2021, do they consider that? If that's building to codes, do they give you a better rate so you can incorporate those costs? Or
there have been, like Freddie Mac used to offer energy improvement mortgages, and there was a movement away from that, and there's a movement now towards that based on energy scores, which come through modeling different programs like Energy Star, the Home Energy Rating Index. There are many municipalities that are incorporating policy mechanisms for that, and banks that are following and offering based on conservation and not generation, like renewable solar panels. So
right.
Part of our job here is going to be digging through resources like that, Carissa, and offering that to the region so our businesses and residents can take advantage of that.
I think that's a great idea.
Thanks for the question.
And we have another one in the chat. This one, I think, Brittany, is to you. In the KC region, we have invested a lot into renewables. So if the higher cost burden is particularly due to energy sources, how is the reduction in emissions factored into the calculation? You can repeat that if you want, and that was from Beth. In the KC region, we have invested a lot in renewables. So if the higher cost burden is particularly due to better energy sources, how is the reduction in emissions factored into the calculation?
That's a good question. I think that I will need to either pass it on to Mary or follow up with that person on that question.
So the question, I'm sorry, was regarding how greenhouse gases are incorporated into these measurements?
Yeah, or into the energy burden, how it's calculated into that.
Well, I mean, all these studies do have sections on greenhouse gas reductions, and we do not have that up accessible here within this all the research slides that we have put together. But we can follow up with that information. But it's a really good question, because you're talking now about things like health impact and how outdoor air quality impacts indoor air quality, and any reoccurring care costs that are burdening. I mean, we're just focusing right now on the cost of energy, but as we cited Children's Mercy Hospital studies, this has repercussions on how residents and businesses are impacted, impacting their bottom line for hospital visits. There's a business case that shows that businesses are impacted by poor air quality and energy deficiencies in the homes through productivity problems, the use of those electric space heaters under desks, more sick days, maybe because of mold problems in the building. So there are institutions that have been studying how ozone and air quality impacts residents in especially energy burdened neighborhoods. Clean Air Now, I would suggest you reach out to them. Here in Kansas City, we can follow up with some more information on this, and we'll also follow up with some contact information for some of these other organizations that are most closely researching that. So I'm sorry we don't have a complete answer, but we'll get you one.
Yeah, definitely. We had another one from Scott. Thank you. This is a good one. So for single family homes and multifamily buildings, which would apply to the International Residential Code and International Energy Conservation Code. So residential homes 3 stories and below would qualify for the residential code. And then anything larger than that would qualify for the International Energy Conservation Code. So multifamily buildings 3 stories and higher, larger commercial buildings. I mean, so that's one thing to definitely look at. This is something we can help with if you want to look at your municipality's code. They're very long, kind of overwhelming documents. Please send it our way. We can definitely take a look because sometimes those amendments are in the residential code, and then sometimes they're in the International Energy Code. Again, it kind of goes back to municipalities can amend and make changes as they wish. So it's sometimes tricky to catch in what municipality where the amendments are. So that's something we could help with. Let's see here. Let's see, we've got a couple more questions. Let me see. Let's see here. Let's see here. Looks like we have a couple more hands raised, so maybe I'll unmute those. You want to ask? Let me see here. Sorry, going through this chat feature. Yeah, if you have a question, please raise your hand. Any others? Oh, Scott, it looks like I think we may have answered yours, Scott, but I can unmute you just in case.
Mary, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Mary, this is probably for you. So we are in the process of requiring a certain minimum energy standard on new developments through the program that we work through. And we're finding that our energy raters are saying that it's very difficult for the developers on multi-unit buildings to meet the air exchange on the interior units of a multi-unit building. Do you see that as an issue for developments? Because it's only 3 air exchanges in zone 4, and it's really hard for them to get these things that tight. Do you know what I mean?
Sure. So that's a good question, and I think that's a training issue. So I used to be an energy rater, and when you're looking at things like the common double walls that separate the units, and floors and ceilings that are separating floors, it's just really critical that you air seal those common walls correctly. And I've seen in the past, and I've been out of the field as a rater for years, but it's a training issue on how to get those plates sealed correctly. And then I'd also say that the leads into just a note that the testing requirements are critical for these multifamily homes as well as single family homes, so we can see what the tightness levels are and then what level of ventilation is needed. So again, we're going to be offering training for building code officials and additional training here as needed should we get more requests from municipalities and building. But it can be done. It can be done. It just needs a little bit more instruction, I think.
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thanks. And it looks like Eslin, you have, I'm going to unmute you. You have a question as well. I'm going to try to unmute you here. Let's see here. I'm trying. Let's see here. I know you have a question as well, and I don't know if this was more of a question or comment from Eslin. Although Evergy has invested in solar in Missouri, the bulk of their reliance, over 80%, is still from carbon-based energy sources. And so sorry, Eslin, I don't know why I'm unable to mute you, but that is a very good point, that why energy efficiency is so important. Because even if you add solar things to your home, at the end of the day, we want to use less energy all around, and then also protects from things like Mary said, mold growth, moisture in the home. So definitely a lot of things in the code, in addition to saving energy, goes into that safety piece about even making sure it's cool in the summer and warm in the winter.
Emily, would you mind putting our contact slide back up as we get closer to the end of our hour? I want to make sure that you have all of our contact information accessible. Whoever is in charge of advancing the slides, Brittany or Emily, I want to make sure that folks have access, can see our contact information again.
Definitely, let me do that, and we'll definitely send it out as well. And then Charlotte had a comment too about the multifamily, that it definitely has a training issue and there's new standards. So Scott, we can definitely send you more information with Charlotte Reed, an expert on energy efficiency in the Kansas City region. Let's see, I'm trying to pull up my slide. Let's see if there's any other questions from the group, and what time is it? So we have about 5 more minutes. We'll see if there's any more questions. I'll pull it up here. You can also raise your hand as well. Let's see here. Okay. Looks like Ben, you have one. I'll try to unmute you. My computer's being a little slow. Okay, Ben, if you're still on the line, do you have a question you'd like to ask?
Yeah, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I just figured I'd throw this out there. I'm not sure if it's going to be directly in your wheelhouse, but since we have some time, we've had some development proposals kind of coming at us with, rather than some of the LEED certifications that we're hoping to see, proposing the use of national green building standards, and we really weren't prepared in the planning and city council levels to immediately understand those differences. So I wondered if you might be able to give just some quick ideas of what are those two standards and how do they sort of impact a city that's trying to analyze a development.
You're asking for a comparison between LEED and what was the other standard?
The National Green Building Standard is what one particular developer wanted to substitute in place of the LEED standards. And that one kind of caught us flat-footed.
Yeah, I would have to go back and take a quick side-by-side comparison view of that. I have to say though, I mean, I've worked in other standards like the old NAHB Green Building Standard, in Green Enterprise Community Standards, and Green Globes. I mean, there are a lot of them out there, and most of them do a pretty good job. To answer your specific question though, if you would give me some time, I'd be happy to find some more information for you and give you a professional opinion on those two.
Yeah, and I don't know that I need a direct or immediate response. Well, we've got staff also working on the issue, but that just made it clear to us that maybe city councils and planning commissions need some kind of just brief guide on the different standards that are available.
And
that's amazing, and we're going to be offering resources like that on our new hub web pages that are due to go live any day now. So don't go today and look at our hub because it's still under construction. But we are going to be providing that, and this will be a great starting point. I would love to get back to you on that. So I'm assuming we have your contact information on the registration logs.
Yeah, you should, and we'll look forward to the resources on the website. So yeah, we'll look there and hear back from you and see what comes out in the future there.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for the question.
Thank
Yeah, and
you.
we can send you to what other cities are doing. I think a key thing in the ones that seem to be more successful is that they give builders more options. So it's not like you have to build to lead. I know Kansas City, Missouri is updating their tax incentives, as I'm sure you've all seen, and we're hoping some energy efficiency requirements are in there. But I think the key thing is to give people options, and that's one thing as the code is continually updated. Not only is it being more efficient, but also it gives builders more flexibility. Like in the commercial code, there's an advanced like energy efficiency option, and builders can choose from 8 different options. So I think the key thing there is giving people options to find what works for them as you're, coming up with policies.
Yeah, fantastic. If there are cities already offering that kind of thing, and you're able to sort of point us in that direction, that'd be great.
Yeah, we definitely
Yeah.
can.
Well, and the other G codes offer performance path options too, Ben. So, there's prescriptive, and then there's performance. And the performance path really gives flexibility to developers and builders to meet, these better building standards that are better for our community, better for residents, and better for businesses. So, we'll be sure to offer that information as a resource, and I really appreciate the question.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it looks like we're out of time, but everyone, thank you again for joining, and sorry about the chat feature issue. Not sure what that was about, but we'll send some follow-up resources, the slide deck, this recording, and again, reach out to us for questions. That is what we're here for, a resource. We will get you pointed in the right direction and the information you need. But again, thank you everyone for joining, and stay tuned for more information.